Hello, I'm Diana Skaya, and welcome to Face to Face, our weekly summary of top events, but from a Central European perspective. And my guest here today is TVP World Europe Editor Marcin Zaborowski. Marcin, so glad to have you here on this edition of Face to Face. Now, it's been quite a week. On Thursday, the European Political Community Summit in Copenhagen took place, where, of course, much of the discussions were related for more aid for Ukraine against how to, bolster both Europe and Ukraine against Moscow's ongoing threat, but also a lot of discussion and disputes, Marcin, particularly about frozen Russian assets. What do you think? Can the EU turn ambition into action?
Diana, thanks. First of all, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be on your show. Now, on the Copenhagen summit and on the eternal question whether EU can stop talking and start delivering. I mean, the nature of the beast, the nature of the EU itself is that it's a deliberation of 27 member states. In the case of Copenhagen, it was actually more because it was also the European Political Community Summit, which basically enlarges the club to 50 and try to find an agreement among, 50 people going to a cinema, for example, and choosing one movie. It's almost impossible. And we witnessed some of that here in Copenhagen, where the agenda was pretty detailed. It had some very hefty issues there, like frozen assets, for example.
So what do you think about that? I mean, that's actually quite a big issue that came out. So why is there so much disagreement on that, Marcin?
Well, it's a question of who's gonna be paying for the costs of wrecking the international financial system, because essentially that's what it is. Right. Like, nations are entrusting their funds to a system which is based in Belgium, and Russia was one of these nations, and taking away this money from Russia is, of course, just. It's fair, because Russia has been destroying Ukraine and
the aggressor state, of course.
But other nations are also entrusting their funds to that particular system in Belgium, such as Saudi Arabia and China, the others. So the message there might be: we take this money away. That means that the money of the others are also not safe.
What do you think overall, though? Do you think that the summit in Copenhagen came out successful and achieved the goals that it set out to achieve?
It doesn't seem like a huge success, frankly, because no agreement on frozen assets yet. Right. No agreement on moving ahead with Ukraine's EU membership. No agreement on drone wall, no agreement on competitiveness. And these were the most important items on the agenda. But this is not to say that it was a failure. It's just a summit, yeah? It's a summit, and these guys, and not just guys, meet up, they talk, and, certain things are moved. But results is not very clear at this point in time.
Now, you did mention competitiveness. There is a little clash, if that's what I could call it, that took place there between Polish Premier Donald Tusk and Viktor Orbán over the question of Europe's greatest threat, including that competitiveness. Let's take a listen to that soundbite for a moment.
Further idea, who's the threat right now in Europe? Who's the main threat against Europe right now?
Provocation.
No, it's a real question. Please, Prime Minister.
So the real danger, economic stagnation and losing competitiveness. This is the danger.
Not Russia?
Sorry.
Not Russia?
No, we are stronger than, guys. So we are stronger than Russia. Make some comparison and base your opinion on the facts. So we have more than 400 million people, yeah? Russia is 130 something. Look at the European GDP. It's like that. Russia is like that. We spend altogether 27, more on military spending than the Russians. So why we are afraid? We are stronger than they are. The question is whether we have...
I love you when you use my arguments
whether we have leadership to come together and to defend our interests together. That's what we should do.
And
anyway,
you are still accusing Donald Tusk.
I'm sorry. Can I ask one?
And we saw that with both these leaders having differences of opinion in strategies and priorities. What do you make of that, Marcin?
I have a very, very mixed impression out of that soundbite because number one, you can see that the leaders who seem to stand on very opposite sides of a debate, like with Viktor Orbán being essentially pro-Russian and trying to shift the argument somewhere away from talking about Russia and Ukraine to talk about competitiveness. And on the other hand, Donald Tusk, who wants to focus on Ukraine and make the action on Ukraine. So the argument is very different. But you could see the body language between Viktor Orbán and Donald Tusk is not hostile. It's almost friendly, one would like to say. So it's fascinating in a sense because these guys they go back a very long time. They have known each other for like 20 years. They were together a part of the same European family, the European People's Party that Viktor Orbán was being moved from, was kicked out from. So they have a mixed history, and clearly there is still some kind of a positive emotions between them, some kind of a positive body language, even though they're
disagreeing on
they disagree very fundamentally
factor
on the issue of Russia and Ukraine.
Yeah, right. But now, do you think that also, Marcin, that this tension? I understand you're saying body language, but there's also a little bit of tension that we saw between them. Do you think it raises a broader question about solidarity in the European Union, and particularly to the question of Russia and, of course, the future of the EU related to the war and related to everything else?
Well, this is an illustration of, these two guys talking to each other is an illustration of the European project in some respects, yeah? So we have one end, yeah? Viktor Orbán, pro-Russian, anti-Ukrainian, basically censored by a lot of the EU about the issues of rule of law in his country, and on the other hand, very pro-European Donald Tusk. There is a lot of countries in between, but these are the opposing poles.
And Donald Tusk and competitiveness? And
Donald Tusk on competitiveness also. I don't think he's got very different views to Viktor Orbán on this issue. Donald Tusk is also saying that Europe is losing competitiveness, but he sees different prescriptions on that. Because essentially what Orbán is saying, in order to fix our competitiveness, we need to run on cheap Russian gas and oil. And he wants to continue with that, yeah?
And let's listen to a soundbite for just a moment.
Companies are leaving Europe. I don't want to spoil the good atmosphere here and the good mood, and I fully understand your argumentation, Emmanuel. And yes, we have to protect our companies, especially our steel companies in Europe, in Poland, everywhere. But the reality is very brutal. I remember my last discussion with the biggest producer of steel in the world, and very active in Poland also. And he was brutally clear with me. There is no chance to continue his work on our continent with our overregulation, high energy prices. And this is why, not only for him, today the United States, Canada, Brazil is radically more attractive than Europe.
Well, there you go, Marcin. We're just hearing there Premier Donald Tusk saying, of course, high energy prices. How do we respond to this?
Well, but he's not saying that can be fixed by more Russian energy. He's basically saying there is too much regulation. We have to fix that, and then also we have to diversify our energy sources. Yeah. And even though Orban is using the same term, let's enhance competitiveness and so on, he's basically saying the way to do it is to get more Russian gas, more Russian oil, and stop supporting Ukraine. So they are, seemingly talking about the same thing, but they use very different prescriptions on fixing the problem.
And if those kind of Russian provocations weren't enough, I want to lead into our next topic, hybrid warfare. Marcin, again, so Polish Premier Donald Tusk recently said we're in a new type of war, and he was commenting on recent Russian hybrid activity in Europe. Let's remind our viewers that some of Moscow's vessels had been spotted circulating close to a Polish pipeline near the port of Szczecin, right, in Poland. Now we're seeing Moscow move from this not only, military aggressor state, but now also slowly conducting hybrid operations, right? Drones, cyber attacks, sabotage. I mean, Marcin, I'll be honest with you. I just came back from a trip from Armenia with TVP World, where we were at a NATO Parliamentary Assembly conference, where a lot of the topics was actually focused on Russian sabotage and hybrid warfare there as well. So it's not only touching our region here, the CE region, it's also touching the South Caucasus as well. It just goes to show you how, active Russia is in this entire sphere. What can you comment on this?
Well,
what is Russia's goal here exactly?
I think that it's clear that Russia is testing our resolve and wants to see how we're going to, if we are going to respond. And it wants to destabilize the situation in the countries which are supporting Ukraine. So, and the Russian activities there have been increasing both in scope, in method, and also in punch, one might say. Yeah? So, because they started with something like sponsoring arson attacks in Poland, in Germany, and Lithuania. Yeah? Then they are sending drones. We had like 20-something drones here in Poland, Russian drones, crossing the border, violating our airspace.
Right?
And that happened only a month ago. Last year, it would send like shock waves around the country. Now we think, oh well, it's terrible, it happened, yeah, but we're kind of getting used to that, and that's why I think that. The Baltic leaders, they had a point when the Baltic leaders were saying, don't call it a hybrid warfare, because when people think that it's hybrid, then think it's not a real danger and real threat to them.
So it is a real danger.
It is a real danger because, once you shot the drone and you don't shoot an aircraft, for example, the Russians will go further. Yeah? And once you shot an aircraft, you can actually start the war. Yeah.
Just moments ago, I mean, one of the first things you said when I asked you about this question, you told me about response, right, and how Europe is responding. Let me tell you. So the Warsaw Security Forum just passed. Some guests that we interviewed said that NATO, Poland responded swiftly, quickly. I'll tell you honestly, one of the guests I interviewed actually said the opposite, that Europe is not prepared avidly for this response. What do you think?
I think that I agree with that. Yeah, with rather pessimistic assessment of.
This is Mikhail Khodorkovsky said this actually.
Well, I think these people who are criticizing Europe, they also don't quite know some of the facts. Yeah, so we have to be cautious about it because.
So you're saying that Europe responded?
Well, because some people were saying Europe has not responded the way it should be responding because if it did, then it should have shot not 3 drones, but like 20 drones.
But many more,
yeah?
exactly.
But we know that shooting a drone with a missile which costs like $2 or $3 million and a drone which is made of some cheap stuff for $3,000 or $4,000 doesn't make much sense. Yeah. Plus, when you shot it, it's gonna land somewhere and it can destroy a property, and it can even kill some people. So we need to be careful about it. But then again, the very fact that 20 drones went into the Polish territory, very close to that city of Warsaw, in fact, yeah. It's a cause of concern, I think, and patting ourselves on the back and say, oh yeah, it's great because we shot 3 of them. I don't think it's good enough, yeah. And yes, we do have all these things. We invested a lot in defense, into stuff like tanks and aircraft and missiles and so on, but we don't really have a drone protection. And I think that's a problem around everywhere in Europe.
Marcin, there's also a latest statement that Russian President Vladimir Putin made about Poland. Can you walk us through that?
Well, I would see it as an element of a hybrid warfare. During his conference, which he does every year in Valdai, where he invites a lot of journalists, Russia pays for that, people are excited that they are there. Vladimir Putin spends hours with them, so...
hence Russian propaganda.
Hence Russian propaganda. It's an element of a, basically disinformation, I would say, yeah. But during that courtesy debate, he says things like Poland made mistakes in the past and paid very dearly for that. And one of his mistakes was that it did challenge Nazi Germany in 1939. It did not accept the Nazi offer when the Nazis said, give us Gdańsk, give us a corridor, which would connect East Prussia with the rest of Germany. And then, that we'll be fine, and we could have peace. Everybody knows that giving the Russians a little bit of something leads
taking everything.
Leads to wanting them to take more than that. So, and him supporting that Nazi argument, I think, is absolutely outstanding. It's just shocking.
Well, another thing that Russia doesn't seem to accept also is that they have just lost Moldova. I mean, Sergei Lavrov spoke out saying that there was foreign interference in Moldova, of course, outright denying that it was Russian interference. Marcin, Moldova's ruling pro-EU PAS party secured the parliamentary majority in their high-stakes election, even though Russia put in so much into, disinformation. Again, more hybrid warfare. What do we think about these latest elections? And also, what I really want to know is your opinion on what was the really decisive factor that led Moldova to choose the pro-EU path, even though Russia was reportedly so successful in putting so much into these to try to persuade voters in the elections.
Well, I think altogether this is a very positive story, because we just starting off from saying that the Copenhagen summit did not deliver, that we have problems here, we have problem there, that we don't have drone protection. But despite all its faults and its weaknesses, the EU is still has the power of attraction, and Moldova is a testimony to that. Where the poorest country in Europe, subjected to very intense Russian disinformation and manipulation, still managed to resist that and have chosen a European path again and again and again. And in fact, this kind of a pro-European camp has only become stronger now.
And it's exactly what we see right there. Former Moldovan Prime Minister who says Moldova delivered it. The Moldovans clearly said yes to the pro-European path and to European values. What is next for Moldova, Marcin?
Well, the next thing for Moldova is to join the European Union. Part of that terrible situation with Ukraine is that there are some positives coming out of that. The positives are that both Moldova and Ukraine are on a path to join the EU. That it is possible that there is this geopolitical momentum that people in the European Union, such as the Commission President von der Leyen, are strong supporters of that. A few years back, it wouldn't be the same.
What about the challenges? What challenges do you foresee? Of course, given in fact that I personally don't believe that Russia will stop right there, saying, with their disinformation campaigns and so on. What do you think would be the biggest challenge for Moldova moving forward towards EU?
Moldova has multiple challenges. These huge challenges. It's the poorest country in Europe. It's not doing economically great. It has this breakaway Republic of Transnistria inside the country, which is basically not just pro-Russian, but is actually a post-Soviet enclave where you still have the Soviet communist symbols, which is sponsored by Russia, and Russia can use this pretext of supporting Transnistria to invade the rest of Moldova. And you also have the breakaway region of Gagauzia, which is a pro-Russian Turkic region, also very fiercely supported by Russia and being pro-Russian. So you have economic difficulty, you have a divided population, you have corruption, and then you have basically a lack of internal cohesion.
So it's going to take
It's
time.
going to be difficult. It's been difficult for a while.
Marcin Zaborowski, our TVP World Europe editor, thank you so much for being with us here on Face to Face, and particularly discussing the Russian threat in all forms and kinds here over the past week. Thank you so much, Marcin, for being with us, and thank you for watching Face to Face. We'll see you here next week, and do stay with us on TVP World for more news and analysis.